Mako at SeaWorld Orlando is the tallest and fastest roller coaster in Orlando. This Bolliger Mabillard hypercoaster dominates the park's skyline and delivers oodles of airtime. But how does it stack up to the other hypercoasters out there? Find out in this review of Mako. SeaWorld Orlando and the SeaWorld chain in general have an extensive history working with Bolliger and Mabillard. SeaWorld Orlando previously added Kraken, a giant floorless coaster in 2000, and Manta, a picturesque flying coaster, in 2009. SeaWorld San Antonio has their own B&M in the Great White Inverted Coaster. And both Busch Gardens parks feature 3 different B&M coasters. And it's not hard to see why the chain loves these coasters because of their reliability, capacity, and smoothness. Bolliger and Mabillard debuted their hypercoaster model in 1999, and the prototype was Apollo's Chariot, which went to Busch Gardens Williamsburg. The coaster was praised for its smoothness and abundance of airtime, and it routinely places in the top 10 of Amusement Today's Golden Ticket Awards. For years, it was speculated that Busch Gardens Tampa would follow in the footsteps of the Williamsburg Park and receive their very own B&M hypercoaster, because the additions between the Williamsburg and Tampa parks often mirror each other, and the fact that Busch Gardens Tampa lacked an airtime machine made it seem like a natural fit. However, SeaWorld Orlando's attendance was dropping. 2013 saw the release of Blackfish, a scathing documentary criticizing SeaWorld's treatments of its orca whales. This caused SeaWorld's attendance to drop. Meanwhile, Busch Gardens Tampa's attendance was relatively stable. To stop SeaWorld Orlando's attendance decrease, the chain decided to shift its focus towards rides. And Mako was quite the statement for the Orlando park. Opening in 2016, Mako will be a record-breaking coaster for the Orlando area. Standing 200 feet or 61 meters tall, Mako reached speeds of 73 miles per hour or 117 kilometers per hour over its 4,760 feet or 1,450 meters of track. An addition like this seemed like a slam dunk to increase park attendance. However, SeaWorld Orlando's attendance continued to slide, as it dropped another 8% between 2015 and 2016. I'd be hard-pressed to think of another time a park opened a major hypercoaster like this and saw an attendance decrease, outside of 2020 when the COVID-19 pandemic negatively impacted the entire theme park industry. But that is how damaging Blackfish was for SeaWorld, and it took a few years for the chain to reverse the attendance drop-off. But the attendance slide was no fault of Mako. The coaster immediately became arguably the park's most popular attraction, and it received overwhelming praise. Mako is themed to the Mako shark, which is the fastest species of shark known to man. The coaster is part of the Shark Wreck Reef section of the park, and Mako is integrated into this area beautifully. The coaster's finale whizzes past the queue line, and then it hops over the midway. The supports in this section are themed to reefs, and every time the coaster passes through the area, a thematic musical score plays. SeaWorld excels in the presentation department, and Mako is no different. The coaster's first half is set really far back from the midway as it wraps behind Kraken along the park's perimeter. For this reason, the best views of the coaster can actually be had from outside the park on International Drive. And Mako is a beautiful coaster to watch with its parabolic airtime hills and vibrant purple and teal paint scheme. The queue line doesn't have much theming, just a few signs and facts about Mako sharks. But from experience, you won't have to wait long in this queue line. On weekdays, it's rare to see this coaster with a wait even if it's just on one train. On weekends, the park usually runs multiple trains in this coaster, and it is an absolute people eater. Because this ride has no seatbelts and just the B&M clamshell restraints, the park staff is able to check the trains really quickly. In my most recent visit, I think the crew only stacked the trains once, which was very impressive to see. If the park is busy, the ride does offer quick queue, which dumps you off in the station. It looks like row 5 is listed as the designated quick queue row, but the grouper was allowing quick queue guests to select any row they wanted. I'm not sure if they sometimes restrict you to just row 5 or not. Unlike the early B&M hypercoasters that often featured 9-row trains, Mako features a shorter 7-car train. This allows the coaster to perform more agile maneuvers particularly towards the end of the ride. It also allowed B&M to shape their airtime hills a little bit differently, and it resulted in stronger airtime that was sustained better throughout the entire train. On the early B&M Hypers, I always preferred the back by a long shot. That's not necessarily the case in their newer ones. With Mako, I only have a slight preference for the back row, mostly for that first drop. The front has equal airtime for the remainder of the ride, plus you get that added sense of speed. Mako's dispatch is another cool thematic element. The station has this screen above your head showing some sharks slowly swimming by, but once you dispatch, an entire fleet of sharks appears overhead and they start swimming rapidly. Plus, this is accompanied by an epic soundtrack, and the musical score continues as you ascend the lift hill. The music choice really does build a sense of danger and gets you amped up for your ride. The lift hill faces away from SeaWorld, but if you turn around, you get a beautiful bird's eye view of the park. But Mako's lift is pretty fast for a B&M Hyper, so you don't have as much time as you'd think to take in the view. Once you reach the top, you are thrown over the steep 200-foot drop, and this drop is excellent. If you're in the back, you get some powerful and sustained flagector airtime the whole way down. It is one of the strongest airtime moments B&M has ever produced. But the front row even gets airtime. Those up front get weak sustained floater airtime the whole way down. It is exceedingly rare to get airtime on a drop up front like this, but Mako manages to do it. You then fly over this giant hill that twists you to the left. The element feels like it'll invert you because of how severely it banks you, which creates a really neat visual. And if you're in the back, you also get some weak floater airtime on the descent. It feels like a more intense version of the second hill in Nitro. The pullout from this turn piles on some strong positive Gs, and then you soar over a giant camelback. And this hill may have the best sustained airtime of any coaster. This hill levitates riders, regardless of where they're sitting, for a good 4 to 5 seconds. It is pure bliss. The airtime starts as flagector, and you feel yourself coming out of the seat before you even reach the top of the hill. That is how much airtime this element gives. On the descent, the airtime morphs into floater airtime. It is one of my favorite hills on any ride, mainly because of how long that airtime is sustained. Mako then rips through a hammerhead turnaround. This one offers some disorienting visuals like the second hill, and the pullout from the element delivers another dose of positive Gs. You then ascend another camelback. This one has a trim on the way up. It usually doesn't hit if you visit the park on a cooler day, but in the summer, it will grab the train fairly often. While you will feel the train slow down a bit, the trim doesn't bother me because the resulting airtime is strong regardless. You get another several seconds of sustained flagector airtime, plus the descent features a great head chopper with a support, and you really will feel like you'll hit it because of how your butt is not touching the seat. Mako then flies over another camelback, except this one twists to the right in the descent. The element delivers several seconds of sustained flagector airtime, like the prior camelback, but there are 3 surprises on the descent. First, those in the back really get whipped down this element. Second, you also get some laterals on this twist, which is heavenly when paired with that airtime. Third, you also have 2 frightening near misses with a support on the right side of the train. The barrage of sensations and visuals makes this hill an underrated part of Mako. That is followed by a speed hill, and you absolutely haul over this element. I'm really glad B&M is incorporating more speed hills into their designs, because this element is fantastic. Because of the size of the camelbacks on B&M Hypers, you don't always get to appreciate the ride's speed when you're cresting a hill, but you feel every bit of Mako's speed as you zoom over this speed hill. And you're also launched out of your seat for a few seconds at the same time, getting even more sustained flagector airtime. You then rise up into the mid-course brake run, and because of how much speed you have going into the element, everyone will be lifted out of their seat, but those up front get the strongest airtime here. Now, unlike the prior trim, the mid-course will very noticeably slow down the train. The drop off the mid-course twists slightly to the left, and it does offer some weak floater airtime for those in the back. Mako then crawls over a bunny hill, and this element feels really slow, especially compared to the hills in the first half. and understandably, the airtime is weaker. Up front, you get some decent sustained floater airtime, but those towards the back get some really weak floater airtime. Then comes this twist that defies the rules of physics for me. Depending if you're on the left or right side of the train, this element will ride quite differently, and it is jarring just how different it is. On the left side of the train, you get laterally ejected to the left from the laterals and weightlessness hitting simultaneously. On the right side of the train, you instead sort of dangle to the right, and it feels like you'll fall out of the train. I think I prefer the element on the left side of the train, but I do love how the element gives two radically different experiences depending where you're seated. The next twist is less extreme, but it does offer some faint laterals if you're on the right side of the train. You then dive down to the lagoon and gracefully navigate a turn that leads into the brake run. This turn offers no forces or laterals, but it offers a very neat visual where it feels like you can touch the water, especially if you're on the left side of the train. And you can also hear the ride's musical score at this point, which really helps elevate the finale. Now some B&Ms have developed a rattle, but Mako is still glass smooth even in its 6th season. This is among the smoothest coasters in the world and one of the easiest to marathon, especially because of how comfortable those B&M clamshell restraints are. So what would I rate Mako? I would give this coaster a 9.5 out of 10. Mako has one of the best first halves of any coaster. This coaster is some of the best sustained airtime anywhere between the quantity and quality of the airtime. It is truly remarkable how much time you spend out of your seat on each hill. Plus, the first half has a good sense of speed too, because the train takes each hill faster than some of the earlier B&M hypercoasters. The second half of Mako is noticeably less intense. While it does have some great visuals and a few decent elements, it is a step back from the quality of the first half, and it doesn't have the same pacing. Really, that's the only fault with Mako in my opinion, and again, the second half is good, it's just not elite like the first half. I think Mako is the second best coaster in Orlando. Mako jumped over Hagrid's after my most recent rides, as I forgot just how sustained the airtime was. But Velocicoaster is now the state's best coaster. As for how Mako compares to the other B&M hypercoasters out there, Shambhala is still my favorite because the airtime is equally as sustained start to finish. But I do think Mako could be the best hypercoaster in America. It is a coin flip if I prefer this one or Hershey Park's Candymonium. Mako has a better first half, but Candymonium has a superior second half. So those are my thoughts on Mako, the signature roller coaster at SeaWorld Orlando. What are your thoughts on this coaster? How do you think Mako compares to the other B&M hypers or Florida coasters? I would love to hear your thoughts down in the comments. If you enjoyed this review, I'd appreciate it if you gave this video a like and you considered subscribing, because there'll be a lot more roller coaster and amusement park videos here at Canopy Coaster. Thanks for watching.